Hey everybody, it's Chase with AV Pop Culture again, and today we're here to take a look at what are considered to be 10 of the most sexy horror movies of all time. Now, these are movies that some people might consider a little bit graphic, maybe a little bit gratuitous, but they are undeniably considered to be some of the sexiest horror movies ever committed to celluloid or digital. So pop that tape in. I got you. Let's go do this. All right, so super sexy horror movies. Now, there are some absolute classics in here. Horror movies have always been synonymous with, the old blood, boobs, sex, the drinking, all that kind of stuff. The horror movie tropes, if you will. They're just things, especially if you grew up in like the 70s and 80s through early 90s. Horror movies just kind of establish that, like with Friday the 13th, all this stuff. If you did any of those things, if you had sex, if you got undressed, if you partied too much, if you shirked your responsibilities, the monster, the bad guy was going to get you, bad things were going to happen to you. And that's sort of where it started. But there are other movies that took it to a different level where the steaminess just kind of gets cranked up to 11. But these movies, exception of maybe one on here, you got to have some that are just ridiculous. But these movies earn it. This part of their story, and they just kind of have it in there naturally, whether it was born of those tropes, as horror movies were born from the old exploitation films and things like that, heavily influenced by those. These movies carry some of that, but in some cases, the stuff that is super sexy, that gets your heart rate going, gets your blood pressure up and all that stuff, is 100% pertinent to the story and kind of a focal point. And that's where we're going to go with these. And I actually have 11. I'm going to start with an honorable mention. So this movie is just off the list because it's really only considered to be super sexy or whatever in one scene. So I didn't feel like it belonged fairly on a list that have movies that focus on that. And this movie is actually quite heavy. It's a dark drama that becomes a horror by the end of it. And I am talking about Don't Look Now. This stars Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie, and this one is from 1973, I think it is. And this one's released by the Criterion Collection, just got a 4K. This movie is pretty dark. It goes pretty dark, but what it is known for is the sex scene between Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland that is so sexy, so hot, that the rumor is it was not simulated, that this was actually happening in the scene. And when you watch the movie, any uncut version of the movie, it looks like it. There's been people deny it, people admit it, then deny it. But the cinematographer, the director who were watching, like, yeah, this was happening on set. And it was so steamy and hot that Warren Beatty at the time, who was with Julie Christie, he set out on a mission to try to get the release of this movie stopped, because it was like, I don't want to see my wife on screen like actually doing this with Donald Sutherland. But it is a very intense scene too, between two married people, and it's got an interesting way that it cuts back and forth to the scene. But this movie is really only mentionable because of that scene, and outside of this, it's not sexy at all. But it's one, if you want to see a very infamous scene in cinematic history, you got to go check that one out. So 1973's Don't Look Now gets an honorable mention. Now, when we get to the real list here, at number 10, you're going to find a werewolf movie, and that kind of makes sense because werewolves are kind of about the animalistic nature that is inside all of us, the just, want to eat, hunt, be physical, and reproduce. That's what it's about. And none of that is showcased any better than with The Howling. Now, this is 1981 Joe Dante film, and it is got some very steamy, sexy parts in this movie. The whole, and like I say, and the whole animalistic nature of werewolves kind of fits into that. But the movie stars Dee Wallace, and it starts out with her in an adult store, an adult novelty store, and she's in a peep show. She's wired by the police because they're trying to track down a serial killer who they think's been calling her. And you see a lot of stuff in this store that is very, adult oriented, and the peep show is going, and there's the whole sexual nature of this guy who may be a werewolf who is after her. And then she is so traumatized by this whole experience, she decides to go and live in this colony, or go stay at this like mountain colony and kind of get away from it all. But the people there may not be what they pretend to be or what you think they are. And their animalistic nature is always at the forefront. So you're going to get a lot of nudity in this. You're going to get a lot of kind of sexuality in this movie. And it's going to be intense in some places. You're going to get a cool werewolf transformation. Joe Dante knows how to linger on the things that either heat you up or scare you just the right amount of time when he's filming. So The Howling, I think from that, it just everything combined has to be on this list. It comes in at number 10. Now, number 9 on the list is one that I don't actually have on physical media, but it has a beautiful 4K out there, I'm told. I'm talking about 1971's Daughters of Darkness. Now, this is a vampire film, and I think the tagline for this is an erotic nightmare of vampire lust. And that's pretty accurate when you start to watch the movie. There's a couple on a train, they're traveling, and they're in a train car, and it just jumps right in, like right at the credits to a love scene, and it shows a lot of skin. This movie has a lot of skin. They go to this, it's just very highly sexual couple, and they go to this sort of seaside hotel. This an extravagant, beautiful hotel, but it's kind of abandoned. There's not really a lot of people there, but they encounter the Countess, who is a vampire, and she's out here. She's very sexual in and of herself as a vampire, but I'm not even sure she's ready for this couple. They take some of their things that they are interested in sexually to the next level in this movie, and then you start to wonder who might be the real victim here. Is it the vampire who's hunting them, or is it the people, or is it the vampire who's hunting people? Because she may not know what she's getting into. The actresses are absolutely beautiful in this movie. There is more than the fair share of nudity, but the whole thing is very erotically charged. And if you've never seen Daughters of Darkness, it's kind of art housey, so I'm going to warn you there. It's not like your normal vampire movie. It's very art housey type of a situation here, but very, I think, erotic. Tale of vampire lust is a good way to explain the movie, and these people's lust is definitely on display in this movie too. So Daughters of Darkness comes in on this list at number 9. These people, she's hunting virgins. These people are definitely not that at all. Now at number 8 is one you might be surprised to find on here, but if you really think about it, this may be one of the sexiest movies ever made. I mean, it's a little lower on the list because maybe it doesn't have as much stuff in your face all the time as some of the other movies on this list, but I am talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. Of course, the cast is loaded on this. You got Gary Oldman as Dracula. You got Anthony Hopkins in this. You got Winona Ryder in this. You famously have Keanu Reeves in this movie, and it's done by Francis Ford Coppola. It's one of my favorite vampire films of all time. But when I started reviewing films and thinking about this list, this movie has a lot of sexuality to it. It's very steamy. I have crossed oceans of time for you.
Oceans of time to find you.
Everything is a sexual subtext. Even the penetration's been talked about so many times of vampire fangs. It's like, it's all there. I was reading someone say that movie's really actually full of boobs and stuff, and people don't think about it. And it's all a seduction. The whole movie is a seduction. So it is very sexy. The whole thing is about Gary Oldman's seduction as Dracula, his seduction of Winona Ryder's Mina. It is the movie in itself is a seduction. So of course it has some skin that it shows. I don't think you can have a list like this without Bram Stoker's Dracula on it, because that is the point of the movie. That is what Dracula is after, more so than just blood. So Bram Stoker's Dracula comes in on this list at number 8. Coming in at number 9 on the list is one that doesn't get talked about a lot. It's another vampire film, and unfortunately for it, it came out in 1992. And Bram Stoker's Dracula, as we just talked about, it kind of ruled the roost in 1992. This is actually a John Landis film, and it's called Innocent Blood. The lead actress in this film is just very sexy, and she is quite undressed a lot of the time, and she uses her sexual prowess to lure victims. But there's something interesting about the victims she chooses. She will not choose someone who is innocent. So that's where Innocent Blood comes from. She only goes after bad guys, gangsters, whatever, and that leads to her problem. She feeds on a gangster one night, and it leads to him not dying. She doesn't finish the job, and he happens to be a top-level gangster. And now he comes back and he has all these powers of a vampire. He's turning his henchmen into vampires. He teams up with a detective. They develop a very sexy relationship. As I mentioned, she's quite undressed several times in the movie. And there's a lot of scenes that take place in a strip club. So it is just it has that whole vibe to it. Very sexy, the way she carries herself, the way she seduces her victims. Very, very sexy. Innocent Blood, one that often gets overlooked, which, is a fair thing to happen when you come out the same year as this. But this is a very good vampire film and very sexy. The blood in this might be a little bit, there's way more blood in this movie than this movie. So when you add that sort of nature to the film too, it gets very graphic in a hurry. You got all the blood in this, but Innocent Blood is one that I highly, highly recommend if you have not seen it. All right, coming in at number 6, I had to have one that's just silly, good time, kind of a throwback to the old boobs, blood, monster kind of things, creature feature, and that is Piranha 3D from 2010. And this movie is absolutely ridiculous, but it is definitely sexy, and it has an all-star cast. You have Elizabeth Shue in here, Jerry O'Connell, Ving Rhames, Chris Lloyd, Richard Dreyfuss. It has a big cast, and Elizabeth Shue plays a cop, and the spring breakers have descended on her town and this lake, and so has a camera crew led by Jerry O'Connell, which is basically the old school version of Girls Caught on Tape type thing that he does. And he films all these spring breakers, pays them to undress and make these hot videos. All this is happening on this lake. It's filled with spring breakers when there's like an underwater earthquake, and it unleashes the piranha. And man, sexy doesn't maybe describe. There's definitely sexy moments in this with love scenes, sex scenes, people dancing, people getting undressed. There's plenty of skin in this movie, like over the top amounts of skin, over the top amounts of boobs, because he's making these movies in the film, and you've got a bunch of spring breakers who are drinking and partying too much. So you have a throwback to all that stuff. But there's also some moments that are very cringe-worthy when it comes to those kind of things. I'm just going to say that. So it starts to lean more to the gratuitous and exploitive nature of films like this, where it suckers you in with the sexuality and then it throws all of these like got you moments back at you. It is ridiculous fun. And you can't go into it looking for anything other than to be entertained and see some skin and get some throwback to some old creature features. That's what you're in store for with Piranha 3D from 2010. But you have a big, nice cast that's pulling it all together. It's something. Coming in at number 5 is one that I drove myself in a hurry to see to the theater back in 1995. I am talking about Species. This stars Natasha Henstridge. You also have Michael Madsen in this movie. You have Alfred Molina in this movie. You actually have a young Michelle Williams in this movie too, playing the younger version of Natasha Henstridge character. And in this movie, NASA gets the code sent from outer space basically to splice alien DNA with human DNA. They do it because they're stupid. And you have Natasha Henstridge, who is part alien, part human. And what does she want to do? She wants to mate. She wants to eat and she wants to mate. And that is it. And she is in various stages of undress the entire movie. She is luring these poor men to their death, trying to find the right mate. There are lots of sex scenes with her and these other guys because that's what she's doing. She's on a biological imperative mission to mate. They're in sexy nightclubs. They're in hot tubs. They're in the beds. They're all kinds of stuff. One night stands that she's pulling these guys into. Poor Alfred Molina doesn't even know what's coming. It is very sexy because that is the whole point of it, is to breed and mate a single-minded alien organism that is spliced into the human body and basically just becomes 100% hormones. Species, I was 16. I ran to the movies to see this, and it left a mark. It comes in at number 5. Now, number 4 is one that I like so much, I bought it twice. And it has a new 4K coming with the unrated director's cut. I'm, of course, talking about Lifeforce from 1985. This is Tobe Hooper's film that famously bankrupted Canon. But man, is it a sexy cult classic. You have Matilda May in this, who's playing like an alien slash space vampire. And she is nude like 90% of the time in the movie, and she's absolutely gorgeous, but she is also using her, I guess you could say, feminine wiles because she's not really strictly human, but she is using her sexuality to lure people in and live off of their life force. And it's pretty easy to do when you look like Matilda May and you are completely nude and you are going, after these guys. They are somewhat powerless to try to resist. And that's only part of the movie. The movie is a really good movie. This is one that maybe you showed up for Matilda May, but you stick around because it is a good movie, complete with 80s blue lightning. But it's like part sci-fi movie, part vampire movie, part alien movie. Got some Hammer vibes to it a little bit, Hammer film vibes. And it definitely has like erotic horror vibes thrown into it too, because there's just so much going on by way of skin showing. This movie is a lot of fun. I love it. The unrated director's cut is the way to go. It's about 17 minutes longer. Definitely shows more. We're about to get it on 4K. Now, the Screen Factory release has the theatrical, which is toned down just a little bit on 4K, but it does include the unrated on the Blu-ray. The 4K is coming that is unrated, and I can't wait to take a look at that. And you're going to get plenty of skin in this one. And like I said, the skin might bring you in, but you're going to stick around because it is a fun movie. Lifeforce is a high recommend, comes in at number 4 on this list. At number 3 on the list is one that I don't have, and man, this might be the weirdest vampire movie. Definitely the weirdest vampire movie on this list. but it is so extremely like oddly but good acting. And like I kind of lose words when I try to talk about Blood for Dracula, also known as Andy Warhol's Dracula. This stars Udo Kier, and this was like his first role. And he had to lose like 20 pounds in a week. He showed up in a wheelchair because he was so weak from losing the weight so fast, because he needed to play an emaciated Dracula who is dying because basically everybody is sexually promiscuous and everybody is a slut. And he needs pure virgin blood or he is going to die. So he and his caretaker, Renfield type guy character, I guess, go to Italy. They road trip and they come upon a family that supposedly has not one, not two, not three, but four virgins in the same household. He's looking to get some virgin blood and rejuvenate himself. Otherwise, he's going into the coffin permanently. And when I tell you this movie has lots of nudity and lots of sex and sexual situations, that's an understatement. Some of it is very weird. There's some very weird acting choices by Udo Kier. It somehow all works, though. And as he's trying to, get this virgin blood, he finds out that maybe not all of these people are telling the truth about their history, and maybe they're a little loose with the term virgin. And there's a lot of sex and a lot of nudity and a lot of stuff going on in a very weird but highly, highly entertaining Dracula movie. What a turn by Udo Kier. He talked about this movie when he was doing his Criterion Closet picks. I could listen to him talk about it forever. Very sexually charged, very strange, very, very much worth watching is Blood for Dracula. It comes in at number 3 on this list. Now, at number 2 on this list, if you followed me, you know damn well this movie had to be here. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite horror sci-fi movies of all time. I am talking about 1986 Stuart Gordon classic, From Beyond. Now, this stars the beautiful Barbara Crampton, and who teamed up with Jeffrey Combs in this, and Stuart Gordon, as she did in a couple of other movies, Reanimator, Castle Freak. Great release here by 88 Films. Vinegar Syndrome has a great release of this. It's based off of H.P. Lovecraft's story, and it is 100% about sex and sexual charged issues. It is under the guise of a crazy scientist invents the resonator, which allows us to see into other dimensions that are right beside us and allows the creatures there to see us back. That's all well and good. But what it really does is stimulate the pineal gland in humans and makes them basically a bunch of horny horror actors. That's what they like. It overtakes their normal thought process, and they are led directly by their sexual desires and all of that kind of stuff. Barbara Crampton has the very famous scene in here where she is in her dominatrix style outfit, her G-string and her bustier, all that kind of stuff. And it is just like an iconic scene in horror, but there is much more than that. It just really overtakes, and it's the machine that's doing this, is bringing out the innate things and turning them up to 11 in people as far as being sexually charged. So that's what the whole movie is kind of about. So there's no question it had to be here. But then on top of it, it is just an absolute fun ride. It has The Thing level practical effects as far as like body horror and stuff that's going on. Monsters, you get that otherworldly weird stuff that happens with H.P. Lovecraft films and H.P. Lovecraft stories that is very cosmic horror style. And then the steamy sexuality is all right there. And Barbara Crampton is to thank for a lot of that because she just brings it. And I love this movie. Incredible 4K releases of this movie, so you can see it in all of its glory. I highly, highly recommend from beyond, super sexy, and totally fits this list. It comes in at number 2. Now, at number 1 on this list is, I think, the newest film on this list. I've got my titles all written down right here. I think this is the newest film because it's only from like 2022. A very popular movie. It has spawned a trilogy now. I'm talking about 2022's X. This is a film by Ty West, and it is about a group of younger people. They're in their like 20s. They go to the rural countryside to a farm to film an adult film. They're going to go out there and make a low-budget adult film with this crew that they bring with them. And this is a Ty West film, and of course this spawned Pearl and Maxine. And while you have Jenna Ortega in here and you have Mia Goth in here, I think it's Brittany Snow in this particular movie that steams it up and steals the show. Of course, there's lots of skin. They're making this adult film in the movie, and we see the process of them doing that. There's a lot of talk about doing that. You see a lot of stuff. You shockingly, at least for me, when I first watched it, I couldn't believe Brittany Snow was doing some of the things she was doing as far as the love scenes, as far as the nudity, all of that stuff. Very steamy because, again, they're making an adult film. The problem is the people who live at this farm, there just might be some psycho killer, that is going to start to pick them off because they have a bad, I'm trying to think of the word, a bad history, a bad experience with sexuality and all this stuff. And they have a very approach that you should be punished for it. And they start doing some punishing. And can all of these people survive while the background of making an adult film and all of this stuff is going on? It's absolutely a crazy ride. Now, I have not seen Maxine, but this, I feel like the movies started up here with X, and from what I've heard, they go down. I'm going to reserve judgment on that part. But this movie, I really enjoy. Of course, it's super steamy by the nature of it. You might have guessed it from the title. Now, there's maybe a couple of movies in here that have a little bit more by way of skin or something like that, but not by much. But it's, again, the subject matter of the movie and like what it's based on that kind of levels it up. A good movie, spawned a trilogy. So if you want to see the trilogy, you need to start here. So it's a high recommend. And X by Ty West from 2022 comes in at number 1 on this list. And there you go. There's a list of 10 of the sexiest horror movies. Might be a little gratuitous. Some of it, Piranha 3D, definitely gratuitous. Doesn't really earn everything in it. It's just a lot of thrown in there, Girls Gone Wild style. And but man, it's a fun, ridiculous ride. And a lot of these movies, like I said, you show up for the skin, you show up for the sexiness, and then you find yourself sucked into a damn good movie because these are really, really good movies. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a whole bunch. And if you want to help stick around and support the channel, you can join and become a channel member at my Patreon or YouTube links below. I'll leave Amazon links to these movies if you want to pick them up and do some studying for yourself on what you think is super sexy. That helps out the channel as well. I have an Amazon storefront where you can find them too. I'll put them in a list over there. And make sure you check them out. And I really, really appreciate you guys watching the film. And I'll keep doing them as long as you want to see them. And until next time, be kind, rewind like always. This is Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.
I know.